He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. You know, we're so blessed to live in coastal Mississippi. I know I say that every day, but it's true. This place has brought centuries of joy to the people who live here and the people who visit here. And you know what? We've also been entrusted with its care by those who came before us, and we owe it to those who come after us to preserve it and to enhance it. That's actually why I started this show, Coast View. For those of you who don't know it, VIEW, V-U-E, Coast View, V-U-E, actually stands for the visual perception of a region. I just think that fits so perfectly to the goals of this show. You know, sometimes actually we have to be jarred out of our complacency in order to be reminded of the good fortune that we have and of our responsibilities. I often say on this show that we've had our fair share of challenges. The algae bloom that resulted from the Bonnie Carey spillway did that last year. Hurricane Katrina, the worst natural disaster in American history, now 15 years ago this month, delivered that message and its lessons in ways we could have never imagined. And then in the spring and summer of 2010, we had the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. That delivered that message in a big way. And now the pandemic. All of those disasters inspire in us a sense of urgency. Because of the pain inflicted and the vulnerabilities in our community that were exposed, we committed to shaping the future that assures a more economically resilient and a prosperous region. And then following the BP oil spill, BP committed significant funds to Mississippi towards that endeavor. I don't think there are a few that would argue against the fact that coastal Mississippi is sort of this economic engine that drives the state. In other words, so goes the coast, so goes the state. It helps the state when the coast does well. And then conversely, it hurts the state when the coast economy falters. Hurricane Katrina, the oil spill, the algae bloom, and now the pandemic certainly proved this point. Now more than ever, though, we have to be focused on diversifying our economy. You've heard our guests talk about this. We're doing extremely well with manufacturing jobs, with companies like Ingalls. We have an extraordinary tourism and hospitality service sector. But we need jobs that are in between those two segments by building infrastructure that attracts entrepreneurs, technology jobs, and other jobs that are actually part of this new economy. Doing so will make the coast and our state actually a lot more resilient. It's critically important to our state that we do this. And we have to leave no stone unturned in our goal and our work toward this goal. But this is hard work. It takes time, it takes patience, and it takes money. It takes an engaged and experienced architectural partners and developers who have a vision, who have experience, and who have significant money to invest. And it takes unparalleled leadership at all levels. I've repeatedly said this on Coast View, that we're lucky to have amazing leaders here in coastal Mississippi. But in this pandemic challenge, at a time when there are lots of reasons to have our attention shifted elsewhere, we need public and private sector leaders who speak with confidence, who speak with optimism about the future of coastal Mississippi and the future that seizes the opportunities in front of us. I personally am working harder to better understand what these enormous opportunities are and how the BP money can actually help us make them a reality. And I hope all the leaders are doing the same thing, because it's going to take a concerted effort, all of us working together. And at the end of the day, we've got to be aligned. But the pandemic is actually increasing the sense of urgency. It's speeding up many of the trends that create an even greater opportunity for coastal Mississippi. Things like the structural changes, especially technological shifts that are occurring, that are part of the new economy. Those significant opportunities, coupled with BP money, gives our region and our state an extraordinary competitive advantage in these really challenging times. But it will take everything we've got to move transformational visions forward. I want you to know that based on my assessment of the efforts so far, we've already stumbled in the first round of BP money. In the bill that addresses the disbursement of the money, the legislature actually set up a process, creating an advisory committee composed of coastal Mississippi leaders. Their role is to vet projects funded and make sure that they're funded with a clear eye on leaving a legacy, selecting projects that ultimately, in other words, have long-term payback. But there's a catch. The legislature doesn't have to take any of the committee's recommendations. They can actually sidestep the committee and fund whatever they choose to fund. So the first round of appropriations recently made by the legislature were sort of disappointing for the most part, because if you view them through the lens of let's leave a legacy. So of the 126 projects approved by the legislature, only 8 of those projects were recommended by the advisory committee. The majority of the projects were never actually reviewed or vetted by the advisory committee. We must do better. The legislature funded things that were too often one-time expenses with virtually no long-term payback. Too many of those projects were not transformational. They did not do a thing to diversify our economy, and they will leave no legacy. We've got to bring back into focus the intent of the bill, which literally spelled out in the bill itself, and this is my summary, that the state will use the BP money to invest in projects that will leave a legacy for our kids and our kids' kids. Today, we're going to continue the conversation about the BP money and how we can diversify our income, our economy by investing in partners who can implement transformational approaches. Today, I'm going to have a conversation with the smartest man I know on the subject. And this is going to be the first of many conversations I'm going to have with Ben Brown. Ben, why don't you join us? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. And that's what a great scene setter that is for this conversation. You know, in looking towards getting together with you today, I started looking back through some of the projects that we worked on together, and I happened upon the third year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, in which we came back and revisited some of the issues. And I did a video with you back in 2008. I think I've asked Kyle to tee up that video because I think it makes the best kind of introduction for all the things that you've already referred to, but that also might get us started talking about the lessons that are learned and how we can apply some of those lessons ahead.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Kyle?
Okay. I'm Ricky Matthews, the president and publisher of the Sun Herald. I was also a vice chairman of the Governor's Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal, and had the opportunity from the very beginning to work with the Governor's Commission, with Andres Swani's group and the Mississippi Renewal Forum, and up to this point, around the recovery effort after Hurricane Katrina. It's been a life-changing experience for me. As I look back, I honestly believe that had we not done the Mississippi Renewal Forum and started the Governor's Commission work when we did, with the help of the Knight Foundation and Jim Barksdale, we would not be where we are today as a community. We wouldn't understand what these global issues are that face all the communities of South Mississippi. We wouldn't know that we could raise the bar extremely high. We wouldn't understand what it means to build a community back bigger and better than ever. We really now have begun to understand what that's all about. We've learned tools and techniques that can allow us to build great communities. I think one of the biggest frustrations I feel, is that it hasn't moved fast enough. I think at the end of the day, though, we look back now and we realize that we underestimated the scope and scale of this disaster, that we had so much work to do. We were hit on every single dimension as a set of communities here. And it has taken us a while to get the debris out of the way, to get infrastructure back in place, so that we can begin to think big and understand what it will mean to build incredible communities. So that's what we've been doing, and I think the biggest learning is it's going to take time.
Wow, Ben, 12 years ago, Ricky Matthews.
Yeah, but it's the important thing to take away from that is the realization of two things. One is that it's important to dream really big, to really have a vision that's all-encompassing, that involves a regional set of goals. And the other thing is, it's really, really hard to deliver on those promises. So it's both an invitation to think big, and also a reminder of the humility that it takes to keep moving forward.
Well, Ben, I've often referred to you as a Renaissance man, and we're coming to the end of this segment, but we're going to talk a little bit more about our work together, both in Mississippi and in Alabama. But you're an urban planner, you're a journalist, a writer, you've written books, you've worked for USA Today, Southern Living Magazine, Coastal Living Magazine, you've worked with Andreas Schwani, you're now with Placemakers, among other things. But you're literally, I refer to you as a Renaissance man because you're one of the best thinkers that I know, and you can bring so much clarity to the conversation because of your experience here in coastal Mississippi. When we come back, we're going to get into some of that. This is Ben Brown, and we're having a conversation about transformational projects and the BP money.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90 Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now.
What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fl.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors. Here the show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to touch frequently touched surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else.
Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse at telesouth.com. That's JESSE at telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. I have Ben Brown with us. He's from Placemakers. He's a planner. He's an author. He's a Renaissance man. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and he, because of his experience here in coastal Mississippi and then over in Alabama, which we'll speak to in just a second, he has such a clarity about, and his experience around the United States, I might add, such clarity about how difficult transformational projects can be, but when you do them and do them right, they can literally transform a community. It is interesting, though, looking back, now 12 years that you selected that segment for me to talk about. A lot of that's still applicable today, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the optimistic strands that come out of these really big projects, is that when you get a committee together to begin thinking about a vision, they end up talking about these really high-level responsibilities to pull together regional concerns, to think in terms of transformational projects, and to really inspire one another to think in very large, ambitious terms. And then, of course, what we learn after the attempt to implement a lot of those ideas is just how hard it is, how people sort of retreat to their corners and compete with one another for little slivers of the effort, as opposed to trying to combine it into something that can be really, truly legacy building and transformational.
Well, and what we've learned since Katrina, and what I've learned in particular, has been that those communities that are able to transform themselves, they resist the urge to take the path of least resistance. They don't get satisfied with competing for slivers, and they make sure that the money that's invested is invested in a way that can truly transform their community. And the point that we've made many times on this show has been that while we may debate this and wonder about it and try to figure out what's the best path forward, our competitors have already figured out the path forward, and they are getting steps ahead of us. So it's our opportunity now to get aligned and to make ourselves competitive, particularly as it relates to the new economy. But Ben, let's do this. I want to take a step back for a second. You and I met. You came here with Andreas Dwani. So we formed the Governor's Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal. I was the vice chair responsible for tourism. And one of the first things we did is we created this Mississippi Renewal Forum that Andreas and you and the team worked on with over 100 architects and planners from around the world, including the Prince of Wales Foundation. And we had 11 simultaneous charrettes. You can explain what that is. And we envisioned a lot of stuff, some implemented, some not. But the point was that it engaged all of us around what the infrastructure needs were going to be. And it actually fed back into Governor Barber's work in Washington that enabled him to get literally billions of dollars to fund the infrastructure needs of coastal Mississippi, to position us so that we could be successful in the future. That was a really important step in our recovery effort, wasn't it?
It was gigantic. I mean, I think it's really important at an early stage, when you're in that zone of tremendous uncertainty, to be able to gather people together and think about a broad, really ambitious vision. And that's what happened during that 10 days in the Mississippi Renewal Forum. And then we took that information we get out of that vision and those ambitions into the governor's report, working on it in Jackson, and delivered it by the end of the year, which we were all really proud that we went from October to December 31st, and we had a 178-page report for the governor to use for leverage to get the kind of funding to implement that sort of thing. So the pandemic has done the same thing. It's put us in that zone of uncertainty about what to expect, and that has given us the opportunity to inspire a vision that then can be used to leverage potential for the capacity to implement some of that sort of thing.
Well, in preparation for our conversation today, I couldn't help but reflect on how, when I left the Sun Herald in 2009 and went over to Alabama, and not long after I got there, Governor Riley asked me to lead the Coastal Recovery Commission, which was the statewide planning effort to respond to the BP oil spill. And as you know, I asked you to be a part of the effort, and I brought Joe and others into the conversation, and we built a system that would drive the communities forward. We did it in 90 days. Had over 600 people involved in the leadership roles, and then over 1,000 people involved in the public meetings, et cetera. But we actually built on what we had learned in Mississippi, and we moved forward. And what you did there is the same thing you did here. You helped make sure that all the pieces of the report came together in a sort of this cohesive, understandable vision that anyone could pick up and read and say, wow, we need to do that. Now I know better now what resiliency is, the ability for a community to bounce back. I know why it's important for us to talk about diversification, so that if one segment of our economy is struggling, we can have another segment that's probably going to not struggle and help us sort of maintain the whole, so to speak. But it's so, I posted this morning, it's almost surreal actually, that back in 2010, we were having these conversations involved in the Coastal Recovery Commission. And now here we are back at 2020, and I'm talking about BP money in Mississippi. It's such a strange turn of events for me.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, I think it's encouraging that when we see these big challenges, there's an opportunity to recruit leadership, which is something that you're a master at, to come up with a broader vision, with the idea of always looking forward to, like, how can we build a capacity to enable that vision, and the very fact that process occurs to us each time that we're faced with uncertainty is really with all the discouraging things that that come on us in this zone of uncertainty. It's encouraging that humans have the capacity to think big and to try to push towards building capacity to enact what our ambitions are.
It was interesting you mentioned off the air, and you can say it on the air, but it was interesting to hear you say that as you personally were preparing for this conversation and future conversations we're going to have, the number of people that you saw in those videos from back after Katrina are involved in the community today. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, it's not only looking back into the Katrina effort, but also reviewing some of the episodes on your show. It's great to see guys, like Brian Sanderson, for instance. I mean, he lived in his office in Jackson when we were writing the report there. He was the driving force of that report. And then to see him mature into stronger and stronger leadership, to see Adele Lyons, who was working with the Knight Foundation back in the job, and it was one of the funders of that 2008 revisitation of Katrina, to see her talking to Ashley Edwards on a recent show about all these same topics. Joe Cloyd, who was the get her done guy from the governor's office back into Katrina now. He's a mover and shaker in the development world in the coast of Mississippi. Bruce Toller, who became one of my best friends, Ocean Springs architect, who's really pioneered the movement of the Katrina Cottage community effort, not only in the coast of Mississippi but nationwide. So to see all these folks, it's really encouraging to me, because I'm not always involved in projects that have the same kinds of vision, and certainly not the same kind of leadership that those have. And so it's really good for me. It's a real booster from. It's sort of my antidote for a reporter's cynicism. To first of all, to talk to you every once in a while, because you're such an optimistic leader, but also just to see how it's possible to initiate these kinds of big projects, and then to do everything you can to follow through on them, despite the enormous challenges that you've talked about in these shows.
And, it's amazing. People like Roland Weeks and George Schlogel and Jerry St. Pay and Chevis Sweatman, a long list of people, are still engaged in the community. And some of them are getting up in age now, but they're still really engaged in making sure that these techniques around how do we transform the community, how do we make sure that we're taking advantage of all the opportunities in front of us, are passed down to the next generation. And it is good. It is good to see it. I mean, I say it all the time. We have really good leadership here in coastal Mississippi. We just often, as I said in the opening statement, sometimes we just have to be jarred to be reminded of our responsibilities, and we've got work to do. One of the things I want to do, we're kind of coming to the end of this segment, Ben, but one of the things I want to do is I want to use one example as it relates to the new economy. We talked on the show a couple of times about a couple of mixed-use projects that are being talked about. I think one in Gulfport and one in Biloxi. They're not. The Biloxi one actually may be public. The one in Gulfport is not. So I don't know much detail about it. But what I want to talk about is the transformative nature of such a project and the importance of walkable communities and why that's important. I mean, you helped write the book on new urbanism. So I look forward to having that part of the conversation. This is Ben Brown, and we'll be back after this break.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast View on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.
Be sure to go by this station's website and check out the half-off deals. Audubon Zoo tickets for just $15. That's half price. $30 zoo tickets for just $15. Again, go to this station's website or Facebook. Look for the half-off deals logo to purchase yours now.
Heart attacks and strokes don't stay home. So don't avoid the ER out of anxiety. Don't die of doubt. If you have an emergency, call 911. When seconds count, the hospital is the safest place to be.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. Talking to Paul Thorne, Mississippi true treasure, really incredible recording artist, singer, songwriter, has been doing it a long time, doing it the right way.
It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing because, I was a boxer, / I worked in a furniture factory, / I had a gig 2 nights a week playing my acoustic guitar in a pizza restaurant, / I was in the National Guard, and,
wow.
All this stuff was going on at the same time. / I had a writing contract with Rick Hall and Fame.
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
There's a place to share gossip about the office party fun, and a place to share the story you tell everyone. There's a place to share a laugh about when things went wrong, and a place to share the video of you dancing to your song. There's a place to share spare change, lunch, and your time. But we could all be better at sharing how we're feeling inside. 76% of employees have struggled with at least one issue that affected their mental health. When you share, you're not alone.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
This is House Call for Health. There may be no greater medical mystery and no greater tragedy than sudden infant death syndrome. It used to be known as crib death. For no apparent reason, a presumably healthy sleeping baby dies. Medical experts don't have clear-cut answers to what causes sudden infant death, or SIDS, but now they have 2 risk factors: smoking and drinking during pregnancy beyond the first 3 months. A new study finds that babies whose mothers drank alcohol and smoked tobacco after the first trimester are at far greater risk of SIDS, 12 times greater. Previous studies showed a risk of smoking and drinking individually. This study says doing both drastically increases the danger. The research is sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, which is calling for greater publicity about the danger and improved screening at the very beginning of a pregnancy. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to frequently touch surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
Whether you're a Rebel, a Bulldog, a Golden Eagle, or just a sports fan, SuperTalk Mississippi has got a podcast for you. For you. Sports Talk Mississippi, the Rebel Report, Thunder and Lightning, the SuperTalk Eagle Hour, and the Borky Show are all now available for you. And it's all free. Get them all on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for SuperTalk on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
There's a place to share gossip about the office party fun, and a place to share the story you tell everyone. There's a place to share a laugh about when things went wrong, and a place to share the video of you dancing to your song. There's a place to share spare change, lunch, and your time. But we could all be better at sharing how we're feeling inside. 76% of employees have struggled with at least one issue that affected their mental health. When you share, you're not alone.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Ben Brown. I would say an urban planner renaissance man. He's seen so much success. He's seen a lot of failure. He knows what works and doesn't work in the community, and his influences in coastal Mississippi have been really tremendous. He's a guy that I've learned an awful lot from. I want to take just a few minutes and in this segment talk about how a transformative project could actually be done and what the importance of it would be. So as I mentioned, there's a couple of mixed-use projects that have been talked about. A mixed-use project would be a project that has retail down below and then residential above. And what we've learned about young people who are part of this new economy, we call it this creative class, the people who are the entrepreneurs, they're in technology roles. They can live just about anywhere they want to live. And the pandemic actually is increasing the opportunity for them to be able to work remotely. But what we're seeing is that they like to live, work, and play in the same area. They don't want to live out in the boonies somewhere. They want to live downtown. They want to be able to walk to a restaurant or to a bar. And as Eric Hill from the Center of Entrepreneurship at Mississippi State said, they want to be able to find a spouse. And it was interesting, Ben, when you and I were talking, that that's something that you and Andreas and the others always focused on. Talk more about that.
Well, it's just it's reminding ourselves about human nature. Is that when we reach the age when we start thinking about a life's partner and forming a family, the people that we first start considering are the ones in proximity, and so the idea of organizing, especially public places, and the opportunity for access to public places where people can get together, that's essential for this whole part of our lives in which we begin to form those relationships that turn into families, that turn into small businesses, that become bigger businesses. So that sort of sociology of place becomes really, really crucial. So that brings in design elements. So how do you organize a place to be welcoming to those kinds of elements in those parts of our lives? It also includes, by the way, the return to those same kind of environments by affluent retirees. Retirees may have formed their relationships in a city atmosphere, a college town, or in a place with walkable a walkable mixed-use environment in which they got together, begin and form those relationships for families and businesses, and then maybe they moved to the suburbs to raise children because it was difficult in the older cities to have children in the city. It was more complicated, and then when they get into retirement age, they want to get back into that environment where they can have more social activity in that environment. So there's two driving forces for young people, especially college-educated young people anxious to begin the next segment of their lives, and older adults who are ready to enjoy that social activity independent of the responsibilities of mowing a lawn in the burg. So those two forces are really drive the formation and expansion of city environments. So those are components of a social and economic ecosystem that are really crucial, and so that we have to anticipate and plan for and design for.
Wow. I mean, and so, the right kind of mixed use development begins and done in the right kind of places can create really transformative opportunities. But let's talk about this formula that I mentioned to you on the phone the other day. It's X plus Y equals very high cost. Okay. So X is, after Katrina, what happened is the fortification that is required. It's required of insurance companies. It's required because of the FEMA mapping. When you have a storm surge of 30 feet, what that did is require elevations and fortification where there's incredible high construction costs. It probably wasn't there. It wasn't there before Katrina. The other thing is that mixed-use developments, just by their very nature, are expensive developments because there are many dimensions that are coming together in them. So if you take the X being the construction costs related to fortification, and the reality that we're in an active hurricane situation for many years to come, and then you add that to mixed-use developments as a general rule are high cost per square foot developments, then you get a really high cost. And so with the BP money being there, we have an opportunity to attract some of the best in the country because other communities that we compete against don't have BP money to make a project like this viable. But I can't overstate the importance of fortification and the relative high cost of mixed use. Is that true, Ben?
That is exactly true. That's a major reality of the resilience factor of a community, is that to anticipate these events. And I mean, you are the most avid hurricane watcher I know. So you are extremely sensitive to the development of these hurricanes in the Atlantic region that go into the Caribbean and then end up in the Gulf. And there's a very high likelihood we're going to see more of them and more intensive hurricanes over the next half century. That's just a fact. And so all of us who have investments in coastal living in the entire Gulf community, from Florida through to Texas, we have to encourage that kind of resilience factor in everything we do. So it's a really good thing that's built into the planning in coastal Mississippi. So, but what it does, as you argue, is that it creates a cost that can't always be met by the private sector alone. So that means that a really good way to push forward some of these potentially transformational events is to provide that extra element in the formula, in the X plus Y formula you mentioned, so that a project that may not be able to go forward without an additional segment of infrastructure investment to speed the development of a major mixed-use project, that's what this BP money can do. They can put that final missing element that then makes the private sector move forward on an ambitious project. It's really crucial. And once again, it's not a little sliver of money. If you're talking about a $100 million project, it's the $20 million increment that's really necessary to move it forward. It can't be done with $1 million. So that's right back to your argument of trying to figure out a way to test the investment against the transformational potential.
To some extent, the fact that Katrina hit us and wiped away our coastline is such a tragedy. but it happened. It happened. So in the wake of Katrina, what we've been able to do is invest significantly in bridges, roads, infrastructure that will sustain the hit of the next storm. We weren't prepared for Hurricane Katrina. After Camille, we didn't make the kind of changes we needed to make. And so in a lot of ways, because of what happened here in coastal Mississippi, it actually positioned us to withstand the next difficult storm. And that in itself is resiliency, as opposed to, let's say, Tampa. Some of the models on Tampa getting hit are unbelievable devastation, and Miami, and virtually every other coastal community in the country. In a lot of ways, the rebuilding that we did here positioned us to create competitive advantage within the reality of the hurricane situation, didn't it?
Exactly. And but we'll have to remember that all of that effort, that infrastructure effort, the roads and pipes infrastructure, that's going to be tested in the years to come. And the testing is going to be watched very closely by insurance companies and developers and others as to what will happen after the next big hurricane and the next one after that. So we have to remember that's all going to be tested. But I want to take your example of the infrastructure investment and broaden it just a little bit. That it's not just the roads and the pipes that are infrastructure. It's also those deeper elements of a community that enable this kind of ecosystem to thrive. And that's things like broadband, for instance. It's the social support system of education, childcare, healthcare, those kinds of things. Those are also transformational investments to make. And so when we think about infrastructure, we think about it in terms of components of this ecosystem that this resilient, adaptable ecosystem we're talking about. That's a really ambitious way to look at it, but the kind of leaders that you've been able to recruit in the projects that you've been a part of are the kinds of people who can think in those terms.
So when you think, let's shift away from mixed use for a second, but when you think of transformational projects, ones that will stand the test of, will leave a legacy, will create payback. What are the kinds of things do you think about?
Well, I think it's ones that one of the things we've learned about resilience, that it's not one component that makes a community resilient. It's the combination of components. And so there are strategies in urban planning and in all kinds of ambitious leadership planning altogether, just scenario planning, in which you test ideas against goals.
Let's do this. Let's do this, Ben. I want to make sure that we're clearly making this point. We're at the end of the segment. We'll come back after the break and talk about scenario planning and how it all adds up. This is Ben Brown, and we'll be back after this break.
Great.
SuperTalk. Nobody keeps Mississippi informed like we do. With 12 stations covering all 82 counties. If it happens in your state, we're on top of it. The news, the weather, the sports, and the talk that's important to you. The issues that matter to you, your family, and your bank account. It's all right here. And when you're away from home, depend on the SuperTalk app and supertalk.fm to stay in the know. We're proud to serve our fellow Mississippians. SuperTalk Mississippi.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We are with the fabulous Norbert Putnam as he played on so many hit records, you can't count them, and produced for some of the biggest acts ever. Norbert, Elvis.
And I want to tell you about Presley. He had two different voices. He would sit and talk to me in a very calm, low voice. And we were at Stack's one night, and we were having lunch. We always had lunch at midnight because he was nocturnal. We sat there and we have our sandwiches, and at 1 o'clock, he looked up. He said, "Hey, Put, come on, it's time for me to go beat Elvis." And he stood up, and a much deeper voice, he put on his macho voice. "Hey, fellas, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get cracking, okay?"
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, Amazon Alexa, and now on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
It's me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Everyone knows the only thing better than pizza is free pizza, and right now, buy a $10 gift certificate to CiCi's Pizza for only $5. It's like buying a pizza and getting a pizza for free. Go to our station's website or Facebook. Look for the Half Off Deals logo to purchase this amazing deal right now.
We give HPV vaccine to children at 11 or 12 years of age. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I've given the vaccine to all of them.
Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90, Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
We're back on Coast View, and this is Ben Brown that we're having a conversation with. He's an urban planner, an author, a Renaissance man. He's a friend, and I've learned a lot about him. I learned a lot from him over the many years. When we went to break, Ben was talking about how one project can have an impact for sure, but it's really the collection of things that make a community resilient. And you were beginning to talk about scenario planning. So let's finish your point, Ben.
Yeah, I think businesses are probably more familiar with scenario planning. Private sector organizations are more familiar with scenario planning than most of the rest of us, and it's just sort of a series of what if exercises. So you say you identify your goals, and the goals are easier to come up with than the implementation strategies. So you have some broad goals for the community, community health, improving the lives of everyone, quality of life, job creation, all that sort of thing. Those are broad goals that almost everybody agrees with. But everybody comes to the table with a whole other set of strategies that they want to try. Well, what we want to do is let's just build wider highways. That'll take care of. That'll bring in shorten the commute times and open up areas for development elsewhere. But then there are all other kinds of things that happen when you broaden the highways. So everybody comes with their own little hobby horse. They want to push forward as the answer to all things. But what happens in a scenario planning exercise is you test the effect of those strategies. You say, what if we do this? What effect does that have on all the other goals that we have? And so that's a really healthy exercise in order to kind of come up at the end with some kind of comprehensive strategies that realizes the trade-offs, but that pushes the overall resilience, adaptability goal forward.
At the beginning of the show, I talked about the projects that were recommended and the projects that were not necessarily recommended by the local committee that was established by the legislation. And my disappointment that some of these projects might have been sort of one time without a payback. The way I look at it is that's done. So, and I understand how the political process can work. I really do. But what we need to do is learn from this experience and say, now, how do we get back on track? And we want all our leaders across this state to recognize that a stronger coastal Mississippi is good for you no matter where you live. What's your thoughts about that as we kind of wind down?
Yeah, I think you have to be realistic. I think my friend Joe Cloyd, who was a good friend of yours as well, he's been my mentor in political reality. It's like, okay, who's on your side? Who can you line up? Who can you convince that this is going to be good for them in the end? Oh, and if they don't, and if they're going to fight you, how can you beat them? So it's that kind of realistic, traditional political exercise of recruiting allies to the cause, demonstrating how they can benefit by working together and thinking about ways to enrich this social economic ecosystem. And it's just a political reality. We have to just face that. And I just want to reinforce Ashley Edwards' points about coming up with a way to track success stories, to measure success, and to identify the metrics for success. That's going to be crucial.
And one of the things that you mentioned to me was that we wouldn't have a difficult time getting developers interested in coastal Mississippi if they knew there was a potential big partner in the state of Mississippi through that BP money.
Exactly. I think that it's that missing element for ambitious development is that a developer will look at it and say, look, this does not pencil out. If I can't accommodate the parking that's required, I'll need a parking deck. Can you finance can you help me with a parking deck, or can you give me some better road access to this project? That's all that makes all the difference in the world.
It's a fascinating opportunity, and as I said, we're super lucky in coastal Mississippi and across the state to have great leadership. I think that it won't take a whole lot of effort to remind people. So goes the coast, so goes the state of Mississippi. If we make good investments, we can really make a difference. It can be really transformative. Any closing thoughts, Ben, before we sign off? We're going to continue this conversation in a few weeks, but any closing thoughts?
Well, the only one I have is my renewal, my continuing renewal of confidence, my antidote to cynicism by spending a little time with you and with some of these other leaders around coastal Mississippi. So it's just like remember it's way harder than you thought, but you have a lot more capacity than you thought as well.
Yeah, well, I think capacity is probably one of the things that we all get tested. But as I've said so many times on the show, because of our challenges, resiliency now from a leadership perspective is in our DNA. And coastal Mississippians know what that is. Our ability to bounce back is incredible. And I constantly remind something we learned as we kind of wind this down after the storm, that buildings don't make a community, the people do. And with the special people who live here and the opportunity we have to really leave legacies for the next generation, man, we're lucky to be in a position to make such an impact and to live in such an amazing place. So, Ben, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
You've been terrific, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. This has been Ben Brown, my Renaissance man, planner, author, you name it, he's that. And you'll get the opportunity to see some more of his thoughts in the future. So have a great day.
Subscribe for free to the Coast View podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.